Welcome to the Lift Your Story podcast with guest Tracy Lamourie.
Hi, everyone. I am that gal. I am Lorianne from Milton, Ontario, Canada, and I am with...
I am that guy. I am Roy Miller from Dallas, Texas, and we'd like to welcome you to our Lift Your Story podcast.
So in this episode, we're pleased to have Tracy Lamourie, and she is the founder and managing director of Lamourie Media. Thank you so much for being with us today, Tracy.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here in Texas and near my home in Toronto.
So Tracy, you're in the media. Can you kind of tell us, because if you say media, that covers a whole lot. So
yeah,
for our listeners, can you kind of tell us what exactly
what my corner of it is?
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, my job is to feed stories to the media, so that I think are worthy of the news, and then the media decides if that's the case, and then they hopefully put them in their broadcasts, on their podcasts, in their newspapers, etc. So I'm a publicist, and I work across industries, which is what I love the most. I literally work with creatives, I work with authors, musicians, filmmakers, all those people that you think of when you think of publicity. But I also work with just a lot of small businesses, entrepreneurs, experts in their fields, brilliant people that the world didn't know about other than just in their little area. And my job is to elevate and celebrate what they do, shine a spotlight on them so the world notices, and to make it newsworthy and to find ways for them to contribute to stories in the news and that kind of thing. So that's what I do. Is people come to me and I help craft their stories and find the correct audiences that would listen to their messages. And sometimes that's a 22-minute news broadcast or Good Housekeeping magazine or New York Times. Other times we're starting, and it doesn't mean if you're a small guy you're not hitting those. You could be starting with those right at the gate depending what your message is. Other times we're starting to build that thought leadership, with writing, with small quotes online, with podcasts, with things like that can have a really great reach and a really great impact.
That's fantastic. Exciting. So you said that it was really all your experience that, when we were speaking earlier, that brought you to this. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's a really weird story, really cool story. And also, the reason why it's also a business story for people who are looking for it that way is because we all have something in our, other part of our life that's not part of our 9 to 5. We think our 9 to 5 has to be boring, the stuff we hate. We're watching the clock, but the reality is we're all really good at something, or we have a passion for something that we do outside of that, after work, before work, on the weekends. And my thing, instead of playing Netflix or whatever it was in those days, we didn't have Netflix in those days, but from the time I was 28 to well into probably 40 something, is my husband and myself got involved with a case of a man who was claiming to be innocent on death row, factually innocent, named Jimmy Dennis, and nobody was really listening. And basically, long story short, my husband learned how to make a webpage, I learned how to write a media release. We got international media attention. We started looking further into the American injustice system. See, I said automatic, it's not always bad, but I mean, the cases that we were hearing about were obviously the cases where things had gone wrong, and the death penalty and all that. And anyway, long story short is my messaging, regardless of what you think about that issue, we were on the hot seat on a controversial issue internationally, always did well, always maintained, our equilibrium, even on things like Nancy Grace. We're always, never really disrespected. And we had no media, training, and we had no legal training. And we were 28, 29 years old on MSNBC, on Court TV, on CNN, on A&E, on NBC. So meanwhile, all that time that was going on for years, and I was just doing my entry-level sales and marketing job, while in the evening I was, getting that kind of attention for cause I cared about. No pay, would never ask for money for that. It was, but ultimately Jimmy Dennis was freed in 2017 because lawyers had gotten involved who were looking for a case of actual factual innocence, and because of the noise we and others who then got involved had made, they heard about him, and then they did their work, and that took long time until the courts, finally agreed and he was released. So while that's all happening, back to, our personal business story, and we're still in touch every day, but while that's all happening, it suddenly hits me, about 9 years ago, LinkedIn tells me, hey, wait a minute, I've developed, as I'm about to do 20 calls an hour for a sales job I don't care about, I suddenly realized, oh geez, I've developed skills there that I think could be marketable. Maybe I could be a freelance isn't that a publicist? And from the moment I thought of that, I thought, because I think and I research and I find things, which anybody can do if they just believe those opportunities are there. So sure enough, I found those places online, Elance and whatever they're called now, Upwork and stuff. And I got my first couple jobs by putting my nice little bio. I always say life's a pitch, pitch what you can do and who you are. And then out of a small, and I would price myself low, not super low, but low enough to be, whatever, competitive in that range that I wanted. Got my first couple of clients there, including Angela Sadler Williamson, cousin of Rosa Parks. Rosa Parks, the civil rights legend. Her cousin is a professor, right? She's still with me today, who wrote a book and a film, an award-winning film called My Life with Rosie, about Rosa's next 30 years. So with clients like that, I started to get some confidence, and I suddenly put myself out, just started doing it on LinkedIn. Then I did 5 years as the general partnership with my husband where we had registered our business. And then during COVID, at first it was scary, but I was able to pivot because, again, I thought, well, somebody has to we've lost all the entertainment, but somebody still has to promote things. So who can I help, right? Who can I? And then we incorporated during COVID, and actually things have been going really, really well ever since. Again, partly because I can't travel, I can't get on stages, so I started doing podcasts. I pitch my clients all the time, but in October I started pitching myself for business podcasts, and so I've literally done, or I'm booked for, on nearly 200 now. I've done probably 120. Please Google my name but I've literally, and that's from October till next April. So what I do for myself, I do it for other people too. But basically, I'm proving to everybody, this is what you do. COVID, can't travel, because that was a big part of my business. All right, pivot, do this, figure this out. And now I'm realizing at the other end of COVID, something is going to happen that I didn't even realize, which is I'm going to have stages opening up, because now I have speaking about not just doing PR, which I was already doing at a high level, but now I'm going to have tons of stages where I can be speaking about PR to audiences and why they should do it instead of even just doing it. And that's just from doing podcasts, which don't pay, but they don't have to, because your influence is increased and people see you and get to like you if they like you, or maybe they don't and they don't call you. But if they do like you, they call you. And I've had that happen. And well, yeah, I talk a lot too, but less long. Okay. It's a long story. It's hard to make that one short.
That's great. Well, it's like they say, though. I mean, we had a guest on, and I love what it said. You attract people like you. And that's who you want to have around, is the people who need what you are offering as well, and that are going to appreciate it. And the ones that don't, you don't really want them anyway. I mean, you have, like you said, in a job, you have to deal with people, right? You have no choice. You can't fire them. You have to quit or find another job, or whatever. But in this case, you have that choice. If it's not working out, you just make it, obviously appropriate, breakup kind of thing. But
I do, absolutely, and I'll do that because I want to be. My business is heart-centered. I love every project. Either I love what they're doing, which means I love every person I'm working with. They're all inspirational, and they're all, whether it's a small business person just doing a little thing they didn't even think they were inspirational, but look what they're doing, or they're Rosa Parks' cousin with an important message, or a 13-year-old Bolo, or Jimmy Dennis, who's now a recording artist. Now that he's free from death row, he's been in Rolling Stone, on BET, all kinds of stuff, and being taken seriously, like actually not as a novelty act, as an R&B artist, which that's what he was before they stole him away, as he said, for 25 years. So, we're still making history. Yeah, still making history on that. And there've been media people, coming around talking about movies and all kinds of stuff, but he wants to have control over the story and make sure that it's told properly, and that it's not just someone taking the story and running with it and making it all kinds of things. It's not. And so lots of things are happening, and again, all this happens, we always laugh because, again, when we first got in touch, we were all 28 years old. My husband and myself were entry-level salespeople, had no idea what PR, whatever, never even would have thought of that in a million years. Entry-level salespeople would have always been in a sales or marketing or entry-level employee trajectory. And he's the guy on death row nobody's listening to. Oh yeah, sure, you're innocent. Yeah, right. And then all of a sudden, whatever happens, or we come together and we start making this magic, and then getting more people on the team, and then the lawyers and everything. But by the time he gets out, So now he gets out and he's going right into the recording studio because people were waiting for him to do that because he had a reputation in his community. And here we are. Oh, wow. Look at now we're suddenly international entertainment publicists. Isn't that funny? So he used to be on death row and now he's a recording artist. We used to be like random activists in our 20s that nobody was listening to, red haired girl, the long haired guy. And now we're international publicists. You know, like it's crazy. It's literally a movie.
So when you were getting started, so you go into the office, the printer, and say, hey, I need some business cards, you know, my name, address, webpage, phone number. And so he goes, okay, do you have a title? And you go, how about publicist?
Yeah. It only took me 15 years to think of that. So and if I had been business minded, I would have, because we actually founded, you know, we said we founded, but it wasn't actually incorporated. It wasn't like a nonprofit. We didn't even know how to do that stuff. You know, we never even had. We didn't have money. We were doing by the shoestring and just affording stamps. We didn't have even in those days $500 to go and do whatever you do to do a nonprofit. If we had, we probably would have made it entire. Because we literally before, you know, now if you Google my name, you find literally 8,000 things about me as a publicist. But if you Googled my name 10 years ago, you'd find 3,000 things of me as the director of the Canadian Coalition Against the Death Penalty, which is something we just made up, you know. And if we had, but it got again international attention. It was in all those media I mentioned. It was in Der Spiegel. It was, you know, in Germany. It was like literally around the world, everywhere, in France and Africa, you know. So if we'd known how to monetize that, not even just for a profit for us, but to make an organization that would have been able to sustain itself, right? We would have been Amnesty International or something, because we had to build that kind of profile. And that's what it took me a long time to figure out. And I even recently again thought, I went, wow. So in my life with no media training, I'm 51 now. So, but between 28 and 35, and then I had my kids, so I wasn't doing a lot of it. And then between 28 and 35, and then again between 41 and now, twice in my life, I built two international, like literally global international profiles for myself, without meaning to, on two different things. One on the human rights defender, you know, death penalty, whatever, which was there was like 18 books quoting me. And some of them are scholarly books. Some of them are drugstore true crime, but some of them are scholarly books, you know, where I'm about American-U.S. relations and, you know, international death penalty work and all that. Encyclopedia of Capital Punishment. And then I left that behind with 8 years in between. Not left it behind, but I mean, I was having a baby and doing all that and, you know, special needs, and it wasn't as much part of my day. So I didn't like segue directly from that saying, hey, all the media I was doing for that. It's like I left that completely behind. There's no connection between those two profiles. I started doing this and then I did it again. So then I started realizing, wow, that's like, I got to go and start talking about this, because I didn't go to school for this. It's just literally believing in myself saying, yeah, I'll talk about it, you know, and then things happen.
How did you go about picking this particular case to start?
Well, we weren't looking for anything. I mean, like the death penalty and criminal, I mean, it was not, we had a radio show, my husband and myself, in Toronto a while before that, a couple of years before, just a college radio show. We could put whatever we want. And we would read whatever news came in. And once in a while, there might be a death penalty thing we would read in passing, but we had it wasn't a thing on our mind. We didn't know. If you had asked me what the death penalty back then, where I would have thought it was like maybe 20 serial killers on death row, and that was it, you know. I didn't realize it was 4,000 people on death row at that time, and most of them were like some idiot that was at a drugstore, and you know what I mean. Like it was more the luck of the draw or where it happened and stuff like that determined whether or not they would get death penalty than the worst of the worst. Most of those serial killers were doing life, or they had 20 terms because they got good lawyers because they were high profile, right? So a lot of things I didn't know drew me in, but that was later. So initially we didn't have the radio show anymore. We weren't looking at anything to do with the death penalty. We were looking to make a website in the early days of the internet, you know, when you could just make an easy one about different issues we cared about. So we were going to talk about anti-racism issues. We were going to talk about, you know, whatever we wanted to struck our 28-year-old activist mind, right? And just while looking for some links, we suddenly found this thing where turns out later we found out Jimmy Dennis had paid like $20 or whatever that he didn't have to be listed on this page. We was looking for pen pals for prisoners, and it came up because I don't know why it came up in the SEO, because we certainly weren't looking for stuff like that. And he said, I'm not looking for a pen pal. I'm sorry, I'm not looking for a girlfriend. I don't even know what the internet is, but I'm innocent on death row. If anybody can help me. And for some reason, my husband and I think later, I was thinking, why would we write, actually write someone on death row and say, tell us about it, please. But I think it was not just the activism part of us, it was also the fact that we had a radio show just before that. So even though we didn't have that anymore, we still had that like information gathering mindset. So we literally wrote thinking, how innocent can this guy be? And when he wrote back, it was like 18 pages, both sides with legal documentation, not everything yet, but everything he had in the cell, enough to go, wait a minute, he doesn't even fit the description. Like it was enough to even on the first read go, huh? And then what do we do now, Roy? Because we asked this guy for this information. And we're just two people in marketing and we don't have any. So what do we do? Because he spent all this time writing it out. And now we're like, oh my God, if we're this galvanized and upset about it, probably somebody else will be, and maybe they can help. So we just thought, without even asking his permission, which I realize now is crazy, we put it online. Not that whole letter, but I mean the legal stuff, right? Anyway, so when we wrote him back, we put it on, like, he's like, what, you did what? What's that? But we sent it to him and he was like, actually, that's good. People started writing him and people started getting involved. Ultimately, we made enough noise. We became family, or like, other people, the lawyers got involved and stuff. We were talking every week. And even as our organization developed about the general death penalty, which was inspired by what we learned with him, right? He was the only one that we ever said, we personally advocate that we know he is innocent. We've gone through every single document. We talked to him on the weekly. Like other cases, it was like, hey, this is what they're saying. Please research it, This one we were like, no, he's innocent. And so, yeah, so that's how that developed. It was like, it just came up we weren't looking for anything with the death penalty. It came up and then we were kind of called to it. I don't know any better language. It was just suddenly, we better do something about it. So my husband learned to make the webpage and I learned to write the press release and, talk to him every week. The rest is history.
Question though, you would have said you were in your 20s. So let me see, that would have been like the early stages of websites being put up.
Absolutely. It was 1998. Some pointed out
1998. Okay. So, but you weren't in the early 90s where you had to do the hot dog and the HTML programming. By this time, it was a little bit simpler, I think.
It was easier. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so it wasn't crazy. But the interesting thing someone pointed out the other day was that it was pre-Twitter and pre-Facebook. And I was like, yeah, that's right. She's like, you did all that when it was just email, before you could tweet at a reporter, before we had to go and find. So, I mean, we thought it was super available by email because I was new, but in retrospect, it wasn't like it is now when they're uber available, and there weren't podcasts, and there weren't wrongful conviction podcasts, and there was no way to get within America. It was very, very hard to get attention about someone who was still convicted. We got the most attention outside of America in terms of that case, and then within America, they didn't want to hear, because until there was like the legal proof, there was when someone was just convicted and saying I'm innocent, it was really difficult. But outside of America, in Canada, they were interested in like everywhere, like Netherlands, we got media all over, literally like Turkey, Germany, all kinds of places. But within America, they would talk about, it's like we became the news because we were putting death row prisoners online, not literally because they never saw an internet page or a computer, but we would put on information that they would send, right, on the internet so people could evaluate it. And so within America, that became like the feisty Canadians, the Canadians putting, like, we became the news that we were putting, but then they would have us on CNN trying to do why are you giving this attention? And we would actually, like, my husband was great, even under fire on Nancy Grace, he'd be like, no, we're presenting the information that blah, blah, blah. And always, we would get messages back saying like, hey, I don't even know where I stand on the death penalty. When they were trying to fire at him, and they're like, but you did really well. And you were really like, you made me really think about that kind of response, right? So we know how to, but what's funny, like, honestly, if you guys think about it, both of you, if you were going to advise someone on how to start an international media company where your job is to represent other people's messages, right? You would not advise them to start by building an international personal reputation. My name is very rare, Tracy Lamourie. You know what I mean? There's only one of me, right? On a controversial issue, like what on the face of it is, but I mean, it wasn't to us because we had an innocent guy, which has now been proven 17 years later, the world knows all that, or 25 years later, the world knows all that, right? But as that, it was a controversial issue at the time that we were always in the hot seat for sometimes. So you wouldn't necessarily advise someone that would be the way to, but sometimes the information is wrong because we couldn't have had better training. And it didn't really follow me. So
you mentioned controversy. Back then, controversy was really good because there was a lot of interaction when, now they're censored. you can't do that. But back then, you know, the like the talk shows, there was a guy named Morton Downey. He may have been in the 2000s, but he was real controversial. But he had one heck of a huge following.
Yeah, see, they would go. That's the thing. Nancy Grace too. You know Nancy Grace,
Yep,
right?
yep.
She would. My husband was on her when she was on Court TV still, right before she went to CNN. But she was still doing, she was doing her thing, and he was like on the hot seat with the father of a victim and a little girl that had been murdered. So like, and they were really trying to pound her, like, why are you giving these people attention? And he was like, because the international community draws it. Anyway, it was really, we never said, it's never about like, hey, this guy's a hero. We always really, but anyway, the you know what I mean? It was just really, when you look back on it, it's like, wow, that is almost like saying, go build something. I mean, it's just so, people get up in arms about it, because obviously it's not pleasant when we're talking about people dying, we're talking about people losing people, we're talking about the worst things in the world, even before we get to who did it, so emotions are high and all. So you would not advise someone to make that the first public foray for 20 years.
And I think too, the thing is that when somebody's been convicted, there's a closure in the family, and then you open up that Pandora box, and that's where they try and, keep it down. And yet that person, that's where the ones that are innocent, and you found out that this particular person was innocent.
Yeah.
That's where they don't really, a lot of them wouldn't have a chance or a hope in heck, because they don't want to reopen that Pandora box, right? So.
Yeah, no, exactly. And just in terms of the way the courts work too, if they reevaluated every case from their perspective, if they started reevaluating cases that they've closed, it would be impossible from an organizational and a financial perspective. They would have to retry everything, because how would they be able to say, oh, well, we believe this guy's claim of whatever, it's not always a DNA case, you know what I mean? And even because they work against you even having DNA, they all have the DNA, or it's a whole other story. But anyway, yeah.
I like that. Feisty Canadians,
journey.
eh? Not one of those, you're not saying the sorry, I'm sorry Canadian, you're saying the feisty Canadian. That's kind of fun. It's a little bit of a twist.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, I've got to throw some Texas in here then. If y'all going to go Canadian, I'm going to go Texas.
You go.
So, in Texas, we have the death penalty.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And Ron White, the comedian, one time he goes, he told me, yeah, in Texas, we have the death penalty. He said, if you kill someone in Texas, we kill you back.
Yeah. Yeah. And we don't even want to necessarily stop to make sure we got the right guy, though. But you know what? It's not just Texas. It's like it's the way the justice system is formulated. It's because a lot of it is the DAs are elected positions, so they're under a different kind of pressure too to get because they got to respond. So if the public is going a certain way and thinks of a certain thing, then it's human. Nobody's necessarily evil. Nobody's It's just the way things work in a system too. When everybody's a cog in the wheel, and not one person necessarily has the responsibility for the whole thing. They're like, oh, well, the police will take care of it. And then the police are like, oh, well, the DA will work it out if it does. So, you know what I mean? And it doesn't always end up washing out.
Well, in the United States, we have a serious crisis with our justice system. It needs to be revamped.
Yeah, and true, and we're Canada too. Like we have issues too. Like it's not as people don't shine a light as often on Canada, but we certainly have issues with. If you look into the population of our prisons, we have people, First Nations, people with mental health issues. Just as much as so in general in North America, we have a problem with shutting the prison doors and not and we're not examining the industry. If we look at it as an industry, the way we are in some other industries, and a lot of it is, and we always say, if the American people, for sure, the American people are raised on the justice, and we are the freest, we are the So if they actually understood a lot of what was going on, it would be the people will be rising up to change it like this.
Well, that's coming, I think, because we have a two-tier justice system here, unfortunately, and the people are starting to come to that point in the U.S.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Yeah, exactly.
They are starting to demand change because they're sick of the elites and the wealthy having one system of justice and us regular people having another. And it's
exactly
an uprising about it. It's in the-
Exactly. Yeah. So, and it's the fact is, like, if you're arrested tomorrow, whether you're guilty or not, you better hope you have a house you can mortgage or something to get a lawyer. And if you don't, like, good luck with that. I'll be making you a web page. Like, that's the thing. It's like pretty much the way it is. So
Go
Yeah,
fund
I can
me.
see it now. You're arrested. You want to call an attorney? No, let me call Tracy. She'll take care of me.
that was the word on death row for a while. Honestly, it's funny. We were 30 years old. What are we? I don't even know what we're doing. And what's so funny? It's hilarious now looking back because I said even then. So we're like 28, 29, 30 at the bulk of when we're really doing all this. And I'm talking major networks. And so we were on like Nancy Grace, Abrams Report. I don't remember Dan Abrams. All these lawyers, Catherine Cryer from the turn of the 2000. And they're interviewing us all like we're lawyers. And again, we have not only no media background other than our little radio show, but certainly no legal background. And we're like in 20-minute debates with all these American lawyers on and holding our own. And it's funny because not once did any of them ever say, okay, so seriously, just who do you guys think you are? You're some like 29-year-olds in a basement and somewhere up there in Toronto, with no lead. Get off my set. Not because which again is a media lesson, because obviously we had we were good spokespeople. We had a reason to be there because we were the spokespeople for this movement had all the pages. We were clearly the ones to speak to about it. But I mean, we held our own. We were dealing in that. We could have been on, and that's with the criminal lawyers. So tell people, yeah, please.
When you're that age, though, with your kind of spirit, the people who are at that age of that kind of spirit, you really don't even think twice. I mean, I remember I started my business when I was 24. I didn't think twice about what I was or wasn't doing.
True. And you got to see that feeling. But you know what? Now I've got this bright red hair at 50. I've been doing this since 40. I did this hair from like 18 till about 20. I'm telling you why. About 28 and about 29. Then when I was just about to I used to tell my husband to be on TV because I didn't have confidence to be on TV, weight issues in those days. Who cares now? But anyway, first time I was going to be on court TV speaking about somebody's life and death issue. I was like, oh my God, I thought I was going to be on court TV tomorrow. My hair is bright red and I would never change it for nothing. Don't you tell, not for a job, not for anything. And nobody told me to. But the first thing I thought is, oh my God, I'm going to be on, now TV talking about it for somebody who has nobody else to talk to about them. Right? I'm going to be on TV and I have to be taken seriously. I don't want people looking at this instead of listening to this. Now it's like it's about me now. It's not about someone's life or death. So it doesn't matter. It's about business. They can come and go, right? But then, so I went running to the drugstore and I bought the brown hair dye and I covered my hair. And I had for 2-3 years, I dyed my hair my natural brown, until while I was doing that serious television because there was nobody else to do it. And it was, other than me and my husband interchangeably, like.
And for our listeners who are not seeing this, Tracy does have bright red hair.
Yes, my natural color. I'm sporting again.
It looks really cool.
And bright red. Don't forget the bright red cat's eye glasses. If this is on YouTube, it's a terrible shame. Background sucks, but the glasses.
Hey, the rest goes.
Tracy, how can our listeners reach out to you?
And I promise not to talk so much when they call me. I will listen. They can find me on my website, which is lamouriemedia.com. They can email me at lamouriepr@gmail.com. I live on Facebook, so you can find me there at Tracy Lamourie. On Instagram, you can see all my adventures, Tracy Lamourie PR Media. And on that old telephone technology, is that phone, you can also text me Toronto 289-788-5881. Beverly Hills number, which just comes to Toronto, is 424-444-8052. So see, genuine and authenticity in business. I do not actually have an office in Beverly Hills, but I do have a phone number there. So
That's great. And for the listeners, just to let you know, the spelling of Lamourie is Lamoure, and then media.
Yeah. Yep.
Wonderful. It will be in the notes too for those of you who read the notes on podcasts, and it will be also up on our YouTube if you want to subscribe there as well and subscribe to our podcast. We would love it. Thank you so much, Tracy, for being with us.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you guys. Thank you both.
Yeah, really enjoyed meeting you.
Absolutely. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Be sure to visit us at lifterstory.com.